Good morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Wednesday, September 24th, the year of our Lord 2025. This is Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Hope you're doing well today. Glad to be with you. Um, Discolored visor and all as I look at myself here on the camera. Our church visor gets worn out quite a bit. I need a haircut, so rocking the visors in my videos, shows, and all that good stuff. But anyway, Wednesdays at Chief Sports are always great, and also on thebigspur.com. Today, Tailgate Talks has dropped. Terrence Campbell, one of my favorite players from the kind of mid Spurrier era, uh, has a career as a police officer, or had one, I guess, last I checked. And good guy, really good guy. We have a mutual friend and love Terrence Campbell. Came to Carolina as a D lineman, played on the offensive line, very athletic, very good player during his time here. So Pat and Steven have a good interview up with him. And I hope you enjoy that. You can get the audio version on the Chief app, also Gamecocks Plus, and their YouTube channel at Tailgate Talks 547. Please go hit the subscribe button over there and watch the unedited version if you'd like of Tailgate Talks with Steven Garcia and Pat DeMarco. Then on the morning show, Steven Garcia is going to be in for his Talking Ball Wednesday. Rob Williams from SEC Sunday Night joins Jamie Bradford at the top. I'm sure they'll have a lot to say about the schedule release. We're going to talk about that here in a second. Also, John Whittle from thebigspur.com on all things. The show will be right after that, Wide Open Wednesday. I'm guaranteeing a troll-free Wednesday. Kind of let a troll kind of get after me last week and reacted, of course, and took the bait. And, it was entertaining for all of y'all, I guess. But, he was doing some unfunny things and it ended up being funny. And so he won. And so this next week, I've promised to ignore the trolls in the chat box because just going to have Mad Dog take out the trash. But that means you don't have to be a Club Chief member to get in. You can be a Club Chief member if you'd like by signing up on this channel. It's $4.99 a month and get in the chat box every day. It's a lot of fun. We have a really good group. Gets in there and chops it up, talks about Gamecock sports. We try to answer every question and all that good stuff. So check that out. There's also a new way to interact with us on Inside the Gamecocks, the show and the morning show. These are read on or played on the show. Gamecock graffiti. I guess it's kind of modeled after the Weiner line on the old Mark Packer show. 803-250-1297. That's 803-250-1297. Shout out to Corey from Orangeburg, who was the first one in, had a lot of good things to say. Keep it pithy, keep it on topic. Phil goes through them and decides what to play, and we play those on the show. So another way to interact, keep it short. Name and hometown is required. We want to know where in the world you are listening to us, but you get some more voices on the show. So that's always good. 803-250-1297. That's the Gamecock Graffiti Hotline. And again, thanks to Corey from Orangeburg. He's the first Gamecock on the Gamecock Graffiti Hotline. Sports Talk 6 to 8 on the Chief Sports app, streaming live, and then the late night Gamecock show tonight with Alex Jones, the pride of Hampton County, and also the late night Gamecock Matt Anderson. So lots of programming on Wednesdays, always is. Coordinator press conferences later today. Mike Shula, Jody Camillus, Clayton White. Didn't say much last week of substance. I don't know if they'll have anything good this week or not. Shane Beamer's press conference yesterday, went through that. He said the right things. I don't know what the expectations end up being about these press conferences, but he certainly has his own way of doing things, as did Muschamp, as did Spurrier. Every coach is different, but he talked about having honest and uncomfortable conversations, and I think that's what head coaches need to do when you're struggling, and all that. Lots of questions about leadership. I think he's right. Of course, he knows the team better than I do because he's there every day, but it's a different style of leadership this year. The vocal leaders, the older guys, they're all gone, but a lot of teams around the country have that. I mean, One thing in all the crazy hype of the offseason and different storylines with NIL and rev share and expansion and playoff and all this stuff, which was exhausting when you combine those very legitimate topics with endless lists and things that change weekly from some of the talking heads and just 50 feet of crap, to quote Moneyball. But it was exhausting, in the midst of all that. Nobody talked about the fact that there's a bunch of older players leaving college football. Diego Pavia, of course, and his injunction notwithstanding. And the Gamecocks, of course, they have Rasul Faison, Oscar Attaway, they're older guys as well. But a lot of the COVID year guys left college football last year. So college football in general is younger. And you look around the country, just about everybody's somewhat young or younger than they were last year. Vanderbilt's probably the exception. I know Clemson has struggled as much of a struggle as it's been. They have some older guys, but they've been in the program for a while, which makes their 1-3 record even more surprising this year. But it's just one of those things you have to deal with. You have to hit it head on. And of course, that's player development, transfer portal, whatever. There is a narrative going around after 4 weeks, which let's just wait and see. I mean, obviously, facts are facts right now, but I guess the top 6 or 7 portal classes for 2025, those teams are all undefeated right now. So it's a good point for those that live and die by team rankings out of the transfer portal. But we've had the portal for a while now, folks, and it's not been this way ever. In fact, the team rankings and the transfer portal leave a lot to be desired. We'll see how it plays out this year, though, because maybe it is. I've said it's going to take a while for the recruiting rankings folks to kind of catch up with the portal, and maybe it has. I'm not dismissing that just because I've dismissed the other rankings. I dismissed the other rankings because if you look at the data and results, it really doesn't align. But this year so far it has. So maybe they've caught up. And what's happened is Gamecocks are off to a tough start. You had the mention of Trotter, the linebacker, and payment, overpaying, all that good stuff. And I'll continue to believe that overpaying is not the way to go. No matter what. I just we'll see what happens for the rest of the year. And really, you're talking about anecdotal examples around college football. And then, so what you have to do is, if you're going to make that point, like, for example, Harrison Wallace at Ole Miss is averaging, he's one of the top statistical receiving leaders in the SEC, 85.6 yards. Carolina had some interest in him. They weren't going to go that far with the number. They like their receivers, so yeah, he's doing well at Ole Miss, but is Carolina struggling at receiver right now? Maybe you think so. You're entitled to your opinion. Uh, that kind of thing. You got to kind of go player to player. Casey Concepcion is another example at A&M, doing really well. Trotter, I mean, I wasn't under the impression when he signed with Missouri that Carolina was all that. I think the feedback I got was I mean, he's a hell of a player. Um, but they had Fred Johnson and Justin O. They got Sean Murphy out of the portal. I think if you compared Murphy so far to Trotter, Trotter's no brainer. And he's got the bloodlines and stuff. And, Carolina recruited him out of high school. He ended up at West Virginia. So I don't know. I mean, maybe Beamer talked about that, so everybody else is talking about it. And so that's a good point. I mean, he's probably, one they could have used. And his brother played at Clemson, and Josiah was a guy out of high school they had on campus a lot, and he ended up going to West Virginia. Um, Carolina, I don't necessarily think they ended up recruiting him all that hard out of high school at the end, but then out of the portal, apparently they wanted him, and it was a no. So I don't know. I think that anytime a team is struggling, people are going to try to find reasons or yeah, stuff like that. Frank Martin had a great tweet the other day. I've mentioned this before, the former basketball coach at Carolina. He said it used to be that we looked for answers and now we just look for blame. So, I guess that's a societal thing. But I'm not ready to throw in the towel and identify any kind of systemic problems with, the transfer portal, the recruiting approach, or whatever. I think it serves South Carolina pretty well so far. But you never know. I mean, you never know. Obviously, there's a lot to clean up with this football team. So it could be that that's the case, but I'm just not ready to say that right now because you have a lot of good portal guys that came in that are playing high level football for the Gamecocks right now. So, and receivers, fine. I think coming out of the Missouri game, receivers probably, a position that's gotten better and better as the years gone on. The younger guys are not freshmen anymore. Brian Rowe, Donovan Murph didn't have a catch the other night, but he's done some really good things. Vendrevius Jacobs has taken it to another level, and so has Nick Harbor. So that's what, four guys right there. And, you're not even talking about Jared Brown, Mazeo Bennett coming on or Malik Clark or any of those guys. So, you know, wait and see on all that. I tend to agree with Beamer that none of this is really personnel related. Are they as good at some spots as they were last year? No. There's no Nick Eamon back there in the secondary. There's no TJ Sanders at defensive tackle. But there's a lot of good football players, and you should be able to win. Anyway, I'm never gonna say. I do think they missed Vershawn Lee on the offensive line from, I guess, a communication standpoint at center, because that's been very discombobulated. But I'm never going to say that on the offensive line, the reason they're not as good, because they haven't been as good as they were last year, as tough as that a year was. I mean, they haven't improved collectively as a unit. But I'm never going to say it's because Torres Ellie Simpkins and Kamar Bell aren't there. Nothing against those guys, but you've got interior guys that are pretty dang good. You're starting a true freshman in there that's battling his butt off. He's not perfect, but he's good. So you're never going to hear me say anything about that position overall. And hopefully they get it straightened out. I think we can all agree that the offensive line has to be straightened out. So anyway, that's kind of an interesting narrative that's been floating around. That look, I said going into this year, told myself, I said, self, if things don't go well, which they always have that chance in the SEC and following this program, unless you just cross the line and attack somebody personally, which pisses me off. People talking about people's appearance or what they're doing in their personal lives or their mental health or anything like that. That's dumb. Let's keep it to football. Anything football wise, man, I'm not gonna brush back too hard. I'm not gonna die on the hill. Because reflecting over the off season in the summer, and it was such a good ending to last year. We talked all off season, started coffee back in January. It's rolling strong. I think we're on episode 163. Uh, it doesn't serve anybody any good for me to sit here and argue with people and diminish their opinions, because guess what? We're in this money era of college football. It's more expensive than ever to follow the team, to go to games. Trust me, I was in Atlanta. That kind of, as cheap as the concessions are at Mercedes-Benz, that trip hit the credit card pretty good. Tickets and everything. I mean, you guys spend money and time. And like I've said before, we all have lives outside of following the Gamecocks. Y'all probably more so than I, but it's not worth it. It's just not. It's not worth it to sit here on top of everything else when I know you're feeling just as bad as everybody and upset as everybody to blast your opinion. Now the troll in the chat box the other day, he was attacking me and the Big Spur and the business. That's a line, for me, but I'm going to ignore that too. So anyway, I just want to let you know we're in a safe space here. You can express all the opinions you want. Uh, just don't cross the line. And that goes for the Big Spur too, and everybody else that interacts. So, but yeah, I've turned over a new leaf this year as far as just blast. Not guaranteeing I'm not going to go hard in the paint sometimes, but if it's something I strongly believe in, I certainly will. But I it is what it is, right? Through 4 games. The schedule, a landmark day in the SEC. God, they hype these things up, man. I'm just sitting there on X waiting to see who the Gamecocks are playing, and I had to jot it down. I guess they were one of the last teams they put up. I'm just like, God, please. I understand you need programming, but man, it's shout out to Chris Lowe from On Three for giving us the permanent opponents in a ready-made format a day in advance. So, I mean, I don't understand the need to commoditize every single thing when it comes to SEC football. But hey, it's programming, right? So who am I to judge? I think this, and there are some panicky tweets last night about this, that, and the other, and people talking about top 25 teams on the schedule in 2028. And I'm like, I don't know. It's, team program job. Top 25 programs, yeah, I'll buy that. Top 25 teams, you don't know. We don't know. Obviously, we don't know. If you look at the preseason rankings, the player rankings, and all that, off season's insane. So I look at it like 2 ways for 2026. Number one, and this is without thinking about who the Gamecocks may have back and all that. I'm certainly not trying to throw in the towel on this season and just look ahead to 2026. But heck, the schedule came out and it's important, so we're going to talk about it a little bit. I kind of try to look. I'm looking at like long history. Like has Carolina struggled historically against this team because that matters. That's it matters. Obviously, Carolina went through a period where they struggled with Kentucky. Well, hopefully that's over, and hopefully it doesn't start again Saturday night. Now it's Missouri, and I'm not going to say Vanderbilt just yet because Vanderbilt's got one of their best teams, and they sustain it? Will they be a tough out? As long as they keep running that offense and keep filling holes in the portal and stuff, yes, they will be a tough out. But I don't know that they've flipped the series based on one win. So Vanderbilt's not on the schedule next year, though, for the first time since 1991. Georgia is back. Georgia will be coming to Williams-Brice next year. We know the series with the Bulldogs is lopsided. We also know, before Kirby Smart got there, it was usually a hell of a ball game. Ray Goff, Jim Donnan, Mark Richt all had their periods of struggle against South Carolina. I think Georgia's 22-10 against Carolina in SEC games, but Kirby's only lost one, 16, 17, 18. He lost 19. He won 20, 21, 22, and 23. So Kirby's 3-6. Kirby's 7-1. So 22-10, 7-1, 15-9 otherwise, which for a series that Carolina's 19-55 in, that's pretty competitive. It's going to take a lot to compete against those guys, but silver lining, the 2023 team went down to Athens and put a scare in them. So they got to come to Williams-Brice. They've blown Carolina out in Columbia the last 3 times, I believe, and won 4 in a row. So there's an opportunity there. Kentucky comes back to Columbia next season. So it kind of flips. Normally in even numbered years, historically, Carolina's gone to Lexington, but that's not going to be the case. So Carolina plays Kentucky at home. Mississippi State comes back to Carolina. That's one of the 3 teams in the or 4 teams, 5 teams actually, because Carolina's 2-0 all time against Oklahoma and Texas. Mississippi State's one of the teams Carolina has a winning record against. They've not won a game in Columbia, the boys from Starkville, since 1998. So it's been a pretty solid run of success against them. Tennessee comes to Columbia again. I think the Vols, the opener in 2020 and that overtime game in 14 that Carolina blew the lead, that's really been it as far as winning at Williams-Brice. That's been it for winning at Williams-Brice for Tennessee the last 15 years. So they've really struggled in Columbia. Um, Offense aside, Texas A&M's lost two in a row in Columbia. They come back next year. And then the non-conference games, Miami, Clemson, Towson. Clemson's on the road. Miami's at home. Towson's at home. So it's a tough schedule, but certainly not a lot of teams here that you go, like Missouri right now, you know. The Gamecocks go to Florida. You don't know what's going to be going on with Florida next year with Billy Napier and that thing kind of circling the drain in Gainesville. Let's probably say there'll be a program in transition, but Carolina success down there has not been great. They won 2010 when they won the SEC East, and they won in 14 in overtime. Other than that, no dice in the swamp. Though in 18 they did blow a pretty significant lead and had them on the ropes. There's the 1 point game in 06 with the block at the end. The cock block is what they call it. So there's been some competitive games, but Florida's really done well down there against the Gamecocks. The Gamecocks play Alabama for the third straight year when they go to Tuscaloosa. They go back to Oklahoma next season, and then a game at Arkansas, which also could be another program kind of in flux, depending on what happens with Sam Pittman. So all in all, it's a manageable schedule. It's an SEC schedule. It's tough. I mean, you look at all these teams, they are different levels of possibly good, but it's manageable when you look at it from a historical standpoint and all that. So the 2026 schedule is set, and then the Gamecocks will rotate another group on whoever they didn't play outside of Florida, Kentucky, Georgia the next year. That's like Texas, Auburn, programs like that. I didn't write it down, but we have plenty of time to chop that schedule up over the coming years. But that is released, and like I said, I think all in all, it's a manageable schedule without knowing who's going to be on the team next year, who everybody else is going to have, coaching changes, all that. So we'll see sort of what happens moving forward. Um, this game this weekend, Beamer talked about fixing the run game. He mentioned Matthew Fuller in the press conference yesterday. That warms my heart. Is Matthew Fuller the silver bullet for this run game? I wouldn't say that. I just think he's a good player, and he's got a physical running style downhill. He's fast enough. He's got some stuff to him, as does Jawarn Howell. I wouldn't mind seeing him either. But it's really hard with the blocking and the scheme issue, all that good stuff, to sit there and pin any of this on the running backs, right? I don't think that's fair at all. So I'm not. I'm just saying sometimes a new guy will get in there and a little bit different running style and give you a boost. And, on the scheme itself and the offense itself, there's good news and bad news here. The bad news is Carolina couldn't run the ball, and teams, like I said last week, I thought Missouri would kind of mimic Illinois in a lot of ways. Beamer said everybody's been doing it, and like he watches the tape, so I'm not going to dispute that. But teams have been Illinois played back. South Carolina State, Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt kind of crowded the line of scrimmage and ran blitzes and stuff for the most part. Vandy kind of played their defense, which is unless like last year, you had Rocket Sanders that went off, and Carolina blocked pretty well in that game and threw some screen passes that worked. I mean, that kind of thing. Sellers had some hero stuff, but that kind of defense can give Carolina trouble. If you're looking for the Clemson game, for example, Clemson was blitz happy. Now they spied Lenore Sellers, but there was open field and an ability to run, and Sellers just had a great game running. That's not realistic now with the way teams are playing, and that's yet another reason why Illinois. He didn't run for a whole lot against Illinois, though. In that game, there was some open space. There hadn't been a lot of open space. So Beamer said, Missouri rushed two, had two spies, and then dropped eight. That's 12 people, JC. Dropped seven or eight, or dropped seven. So, and he said that's hard. But what you have to do in that situation, and here's the good news, you got to throw it over the top of them and use your speed at receiver and arm talent. Um, Not a lot of teams are able to do that. So if Lenore Sellers did not have a good arm and you didn't have speed at receiver, it would have probably been a shutout. Very ugly game. You can also kind of pick them apart, find the holes in the zone, that kind of thing. That limits your explosive plays. So Kentucky's going to do the same thing. And Beamer's right. Will they have two spies? I don't know. Kind of what they do on defense, they keep you in front of them, make you drive the field, that kind of thing. That's been their MO for a long time. I don't think that's changing. Now, they're not a particularly good unit. They've given up a lot of yards and points this year. They're not, you don't sit there and see a 17-3 game through three games. I mean, Eastern Michigan was kind of a shootout, 48-23, and Toledo was a grinded out kind of game, but Toledo's a grinded out kind of team. Ole Miss went up and down the field and had a terrible day passing, if that tells you anything. But they're going to play in the same way. So, the good news is Carolina's capable of, hitting the big play down the field because of Lenoris and the receivers. But run game wise, just like Sellers said, I've been harping on this all week. You're just playing right into their hands. So, my feeling is we're going to see a little bit different plan of attack this week in the run game. I don't know what they're going to do exactly, but there's a play to counter everything, and so they just have to find it. So that's the scheme part of it. And that's the bad news is that it's pretty simple to stop the run game, and then of course you're going to stop it anyway if you can't block, or you've got guys leaving guys unblocked with a direct shot at the ball carrier. Jeez. So hopefully they can get that fixed. Like I said, I don't know that this is the best Kentucky defense I've ever seen them have come in here. I don't even think it's top five based on the body of work so far. But they had an open date. They probably been in the lab, trying to figure it out. And I think with all this, the bottom line is, and there's probably some run plays for Lenoris that they could dial up. Don't get me wrong. So those of you that are wondering why they don't run him more, you're not wrong. But running him like you did last year, apparently teams are just dedicated to taking that away. Just if you beat us somewhere else, you beat us somewhere else. So you got to find other ways to do it. Get creative. I thought chunking it over their head was one way to do it, and I credit Mike Shula for keeping them in the game by doing that. It kind of faltered at the end because if you can't run the ball, the fourth quarter is going to be interesting. So, and those are really with Sellers and the receivers those are low percentage plays most of the time. The further you throw the ball down the field, that's why everybody doesn't just go bombs away all the time. So, Carolina, good job by hitting on some low percentage passes, and but they never backed off or anything. But that's the offense. We talked about the offense yesterday, so not going to dig too much further into that. We're going to go to the other side of the ball today for today's main topic, and that's tackling and defense. Now, it's one play, but it was an important one, and it wasn't Ahmad Hardy. It was Jamal Roberts, and I went back and looked at this play. It's the last touchdown of the game Missouri scored. So I'm looking at it, and man, this was just the defense looked like they were on roller skates, most of them. It's kind of a run to the outside, right? A lot of folks ran by. I don't know where Brian Thomas Jr. was. He got turned around and was facing the other direction. The guy ran right by him. A safety, and I can't make it out on TV. I think it's Peyton Williams, but it may have been David Busey. I don't know. Somebody came flying in, missed that, whiffed on the tackle. I mean, it just, but I think it was kind of a desperation play. And then there's just a lot of jogging as and getting pushed back. I mean, it was a bullying kind of plays. I don't want to say embarrassing, but that's not the type of defense South Carolina's played. I mean, there was it's one thing to kind of get, blown off the ball by a team that's better than you. It's quite another to look like you're playing on roller skates. And that's exactly what they did. But that's one play, the defense getting stops throughout the game. Um, I think it's a positive you can take away, but tackling has been emphasized quite a bit this week. You listen to the player comments and stuff; they've talked about it, and it's inexcusable. And I'm glad to hear some of the players taking ownership in that. Because that's kind of the leadership thing. Beamer was asked about several times during the press conference. I thought Whittle's question was enough, but there was a lot of follow up, as there normally is. Uh, you know, that's good. If everybody's excited about getting better at tackling, hopefully they can go tackle. And they're too good not to. Some of these guys, I don't know what you can do about the other end. Obviously, on that one play, Thomas Jr. got caught up. I don't know that that's ideal to have a guy out there that's 249 pounds trying to stop the run, but hopefully he can. I mean, he's been disruptive in the pass game. I think he's played well, but it's just mano a mano. You know, teams are going to run at him. They're going to run at Dylan Stewart too. And, Dylan Stewart, I understand the frustration of the last two games, but if he's frustrated in those games, he's going to be frustrated in this one because Kentucky's probably remembering last year where they could not block him, and they're probably going to make him play the run and all that good stuff. Um, so I look at the safety position too. Obviously, they miss Nick, like I said. I think David Busey's probably a guy that could help them play. I mean, and he played a bunch the other night. I think Sinclair. I keep wanting to call him Gerard Sinclair. Gerald Kilgore played his heart out. Great interception. We've seen him do that before. Good athlete. DQ Smith should be back. We'll see what the injury report says. But I think Busey, no offense to Peyton Williams, but I think more snaps for him could be in order, especially against a team like this. Like Beamer said, they're going to line up and run it with their two backs. They have a young quarterback they're probably going to try to protect by running the ball, and he can beat you play action wise and stuff. Their receivers aren't bad. They got some speed if you creep up to stop the run and can't get it done. Wasn't the best game for the interior D line the other night, but I think they continue to play hard. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy was a concern for an injury on Sunday. We'll see where he is. Nick Barrett, Michael Goodwine, Troy Pikes. I think they're playing well. Can they play better? Absolutely. Everybody on the defense can. Justin Okoronkwo and Fred Johnson being in there at the same time. I like that. They're going to make mistakes, but you live with it because of what they bring to the table athletically. And Fred Johnson, better game against Missouri, obviously, than Vanderbilt. And there's some plays he makes where you're like, wow. On this, they gave him a sack, but he basically ran the quarterback out of bounds because he tracked him down. I think with him and Justin specifically, the more they play, I think the better they're going to play. Yeah, I believe that Fred had the big opener, was playing free and loose. And he had a couple of games where kind of disappeared, especially Vanderbilt. And their scheme's probably challenging for a young player. But then he came back against Missouri, and if he can he needs to take another step back toward that guy we saw against Virginia Tech this weekend. Judge Collier, this is important because we have not seen the physical play on the perimeter like we did last year, where Collier, O'Donnell Fortune, Vicari Swain, in a lot of moments, that was one of the more impressive things that gets overlooked about last year's defense. Teams couldn't get outside, and it forced them to kind of be inside. And then the defensive line could, what do the kids say, eat. That's not a kid thing, I guess. They could eat, a little bit. But That's been missing out there in a lot of instances, that tackling on the perimeter. Cissay's pretty good at it, kind of a cover guy. Uh, Jalen Kilgore had 10 tackles the other night, so I think he's getting back healthy. Very productive outing for him at nickel. So you get Collier back, you get a physical presence over there, and I hope he's good to go. He said he practiced, you know, it may be more LSU, but boy, if he could get going against Kentucky, that would be helpful. Kentucky sometimes will throw a little reverse at you, things like that, but he is a very, very, very good tackler. Um, and so you need that. You need good tacklers out there. He's a third-year guy, team leader. They've missed him. Probably, I mean, you had depth at corner, so you got through, but your best corner, I mean, he is probably the best corner and the most physical by a mile. You missed him. So hopefully he can get back and get into things, no relapses. And like I said, it may be that it's maybe he plays some this weekend, and then by the time LSU gets here, he's ready to roll, which is certainly going to need him against LSU. But it was good to hear that Judge Collier was back at practice. So if you have Collier back there, David Busey, a couple of bone crunching guys, I'd feel a little better about it. Linebackers have to play better. Obviously, the other end and the run game is a concern. But hopefully Dylan Stewart gets going this weekend. I feel really bad for him. He's out there playing hard, getting held just like always, and probably very frustrating for him. But tackling this week, and sometimes with a younger group like they have on defense, it's not totally younger, but you got to kind of get them in there and be like, all right, guys, you got to grow up a little bit and get after it. Don't be scared. I don't think they were scared, but don't let the basics of football escape you, kind of overthinking, and don't play like you're on roller skates, like what happened against Missouri. Um, I don't know how great Kentucky's offensive line is this year, but I'll tell you this, they're better than last year. They were god awful. And they're not god awful at quarterback either. This young guy, Cutter Boley, Cutter, his name's Cutter. I think it's Boley. He Boley, something like that. He's a competitor. Uh, they like. I think Mark Stoops likes him better than Calzado because he was immediately talking. I think after Ole Miss about playing this guy. He's from Lexington, local kid, 6'5", 220. Taller guy, kind of a Mark Stoops style quarterback, and he'll hurt you. He's got a little fearlessness to him, so you better be careful on defense. And I think that's the key. I kind of, I mean, blocking or not blocking is going to determine the offense. If you don't clean up the offensive line crap, and it's at this point it's crap, nothing's going to matter. You're going to struggle on offense. You have to throw it over their head, connect on low percentage plays, hope somebody makes a big explosive play to score points. If you block and execute, don't turn it over, that kind of thing, then I think Carolina can have a successful night on offense. That's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is Kentucky playing on offense and kind of using their offense as a defense, which is what they do, and getting you caught in their spider web. Like Vandy caught Carolina at spider web and ate Carolina alive. Missouri's not really a spider web team. They're there's kind of a big, powerful run game with, it's hard to stop. They're good, but I don't know how good they'll be, but they're good. Vandy's good too, but they have to catch you in a spider web, kind of like Clark Lee said. Kentucky ultimate spider web team because they've done it for how many years? Stoops is 7-5 against the Gamecocks. This is 13th season coaching up there. You know what's coming, and it's going to be a heavy dose of Dowdle and McGowan, and they're good. They did a great job. Dante Dowell, I think is his name. They did a great job in the portal getting two good backs. They didn't have like stellar running backs, I didn't think, the last couple of years after they lost Rodriguez and Smoke. But they're back to that two-back deal. Both those guys can hurt you, and they're going to pound you, and they're better on the offensive line. So South Carolina's defense has to have a resurgent game this Saturday. You know, we'll see kind of how the personnel tweaks go. I'm not saying David Busey's going to play more necessarily, but he looks good to me. I don't know what's going to happen with Judge Collier, but I think against this team, they certainly could use these guys. I'll say this too about that other edge. I'll tell you who's played well in limited snaps against the run at edge, and that's Demon Clowney. Now, I'm not at practice. I don't know. I'm not questioning Coach Lucas and the decisions at all, and are not. But we all look for potential answers. Man, that's a potential answer. I mean, because I think he's gotten off blocks, he's made tackles, he's looked pretty solid. Limited sample size, but just throwing that out there. Because a lot of these other guys are just pass rushers. Clowney's more of a guy that can sit in there and play the run, older player. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see him a little more Saturday night at Williams-Brice Stadium. Kickoff 7:45 p.m. SEC Network. Gosh, Carolina hadn't played Kentucky at home during the day since 11? 15, 15, yeah, 2011. Always seems to be a night game at Williams-Brice. Carolina has 10-6 at Williams-Brice Stadium against Kentucky in SEC games. They started 1-3, so they've won 9 out of 12. Biggest margin of victory for UK was 30-10 in the 0-11 year of '99. Other than that, it's been close-ish. And Kentucky under Stoops has gotten several wins in Columbia, including a very disappointing one at night in 2017. I'm still not over that game. But, if you're looking for a side of the ball where you go in that worries you this time, as much as we've talked about the offense, and the offense does need to help the defense keep them off the field. That's a given. I'm not trying to put it all on the D. This D has to take another step forward for Carolina to have the type of game it's capable of this weekend, in my opinion. And I think working on tackling this week and emphasizing it's probably good because you've got a lot of young guys that are capable. And in the moment, sometimes maybe you're thinking too much when you're young, inexperienced. Sometimes the offense runs something you're not expecting, and you play, I don't want to say tentative, but your fundamentals escape you. And so wrap up, get low, all the things coaches say. All right, hope you enjoyed this Wednesday on Chief. Got lots of stuff going on. Don't forget Tailgate Talks Late Night Gamecock Show tonight. The terrific trio of Garcia, Rob Williams, and Whittle on all things on the morning show. I'm JC Shurburtt. I'll see you. This has been Coffee. Have a great day.
JC and Mad Dog Mully on the Gamecock Show.